Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in the month of September. Today's video should be pretty quick because I did not read much in September. I was very busy in September and then I just became very stressed, and then reading was just the very last thing that I did. I'm expecting October is probably going to be a lot of the same. I don't think October is going to be a very good reading month either. I just need to take care of myself right now a little bit more, and reading is something that helps me take care of myself, but I've also been having brain fog and it is difficult to read when you have brain fog. I also did not post a lot in September. I think I only put out one video, and again, I think October might be kind of the same. So bear with me for a bit as I'm just doing what I can and keeping this space as something that I look forward to and that I enjoy doing, and not feeling this like pressure to do, because that does not help with stress. So I'm gonna be taking it a little bit more chill for a bit, just as I ride through this phase of life that I'm in right now, where I'm just a little bit stressed and I just need to lower the pressures on me a little bit. But I did want to sit down and talk to you about all the books I read in September because I love a wrap up and I'm never gonna miss a wrap up. I read 6 books in September and there was 1 book that I DNF'd, so not a ton of reading, not even a super great reading month in terms of average rating, but oh well, it was just one of those months. Let's talk about the books. As always, I'm going to go in order from my least favorite to my most favorite, starting with the books that I DNF'd. The only book I DNF'd this month was Someone in the Attic, and the only reason I DNF'd this book is because my library hold ran out before I finished it. This is a thriller that I have been highly anticipating, and I will say, from listening to the audiobook and starting it, I don't even remember how far I got into it, not super far. I'm not itching to pick it back up. The concept sounded very creepy about there being someone in the attic, and these people like move into a new house or something, and then they see this video where it looks like someone's taking this video inside their house, and the book starts with this other separate scene of someone coming down from the attic and killing someone else. So there's going to be like some kind of connection between those things, and it just sounded kind of creepy, but it didn't pull me in the beginning as much as I thought that it might. So I don't know if I'll end up getting back around to this one. I also need to go deal with my library card because my library card is expiring, so that's also limiting my access to audiobooks right now a little bit. There's just a lot going on, but if I can make it to the library, if I can get my library card renewed, then I could see myself revisiting this at some point by doing it audiobook via the library, but it's not a book that I would go out and spend money on based on my initial impressions of it. All that to say, it's kind of fallen off my radar as being the most highly anticipated books on my radar, but maybe one day I would get back around to it. Most of what I read this month were shorter books. The video that I put out was reading horror novellas, and the next book I have to talk about is one of the books that was featured in that video, and that is Haunt Sweet Home. I ended up giving this book a 2-star rating. I did like the setup and the concept of it, but the execution and where the story ended left me feeling a little unsatisfied. It just wasn't my type of book. Concept of it is cute. It is a more like cutesy kind of horror story, I guess. You're following this woman who's going to work on this reality TV show, and the reality TV show is like home improvement, home renovation during the day, and then haunted house at night. So there's a day crew and a night crew, and she ends up working on the night crew, and her job is to help stage the hauntings. So she'll like hide places and play audio recordings or like knock things off the wall to try to make it look as if the house is haunted, to freak out the people who are moving into this new house. That is the concept of the whole show. As the main character is working on this show, it ends up being a story of self-discovery in a way. I don't know. I felt like the story did not amount to much, and it is a novella, so I don't want to give too much away about the story, but I really liked the concept, the setup. That was good. The second half and where the story progressed to, I just wanted it to do more with. I probably would have enjoyed this if it took a darker angle, but that just wasn't what it was, so it didn't end up being my favorite thing. Next is The Night Guest, also featured in that reading vlog I did. I ended up giving this book a 2.5-star rating. This is a story about a woman who is experiencing this really strange thing where she realizes that she has been walking at night while she's asleep. She ends up getting a pedometer, a step tracker, and realizing she's walking upwards of 40,000 steps in the middle of the night in her sleep. And so she is trying to figure out what's going on there. This is another book that I left feeling unsatisfied. I did listen to this all in one go on audiobook, so that also sort of gives me an experience when I read a book all in one sitting of not like getting through it too quickly and feeling like you didn't sit with the story, but it did leave me feeling like, oh, that was it. Like I wanted more to the story. I was hoping that more would be explored, and maybe I would have felt differently if I were sitting down with it over a couple sittings physically, but it's such a short book that it's so easy to read all in one sitting. I think there were some interesting things laid out in the story, but I just didn't feel like they were fully explored in the way that I was looking for. Didn't hate it, didn't love it, felt pretty neutral about it. Would read from the author author again. The next book is one of the books that I've had on my radar of backlist books that I wanted to get to in 2024. At the beginning of the year, I did a video talking about 10 backlist books I want to read. This was one of them, so I'm glad to have knocked it off my list, and that is Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight. This was on my radar as a backlist book I wanted to read because it just sounded so good to me. I thought it could be a 5-star. It wasn't. But it was a 3-star, which isn't too bad. I did enjoy the book. It was pretty much what I was expecting, but also not at all what I was expecting, because there's no way to know that this is what you're going to get in this story. But based on the average rating of this book being relatively low, the reviews I've heard about it, I could tell it was going to be a less mainstream kind of mystery thriller, something a little bit different. That was probably going to be something that not a ton of people could enjoy, but might be something that I could find interesting. The concept of this one is that these two characters are spending one final night together before separating. They have had this situation happen to them where they were hiking and their guide ended up dying, and they both kind of think the other one did it. So there's a lot of tension between them, and it follows them over the course of the night, unraveling this experience. That's about all the synopsis gives away, so it is very difficult to go into this book knowing what to expect, because you're like, okay, like, interesting, what's gonna happen in this book over the course of one night. And as you're reading the book, you're getting that feeling too. You're like, interesting, where is this going? And then it takes some really surprising turns. There's some really surprising reveals, and it's just really unique and strange in the way the story unravels itself to you. I will say I left this book giving it a 3-star rating because I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. What I most enjoyed was the experience reading it, because it was such a strange experience. I never knew where I was going to go, and it was very elusive in the way it was like slowly revealing itself to the reader, which I found engaging to say the least. I didn't take a lot away from the story. I don't really know what it was trying to say. I think it's some stuff about love and familial connections and those sorts of things, but I don't know. I didn't close the book and feel like I got something out of it other than an interesting experience. So I ended up giving it a 3-star. Not mad I read it. It's been on my radar for a long time. Glad I finally got around to it. Next up is Coup de Grâce. This was also in the reading vlog that I did in the month of September. And this is a very interesting, strange novella that is about this guy who is on the subway in Montreal, I think. And he ends up getting off on his station, but where he is not where he expected to be. And then he ends up in this sort of liminal space in the subway station. And while he's trapped down there, he's exploring the space and experiencing a lot of dread. This is said to be a psychological horror novella that is experimental, and it definitely is, in the sense that it's not giving you like the normal horror book experience. It's not going to answer all the questions for you. It's going to leave you asking some questions. It does some unique things with the ending of the story as well, which I don't want to fully give away because I think that's just part of the experience of reading the book. Like most books I read this month, didn't love it, didn't hate it. I ended up giving it a 3-star just because I could appreciate some of the interesting things that it was doing, and I did really like the writing of it. In the beginning, there were some quotes that I pulled out that I thought the writing was just so very good. So this is an author that I definitely want to keep on my radar. If you tend to appreciate experimental books, then I'd recommend picking it up. If you're someone who just wants like a conventional experience, I would not recommend this one for you. Next up is Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth, which I ended up giving a 3.5-star rating. I typically just have a good experience with Sally Hepworth's books. I know what to expect when I'm going into a Sally Hepworth story. She is marketed as a thriller author at times, but mostly what she writes is more like family dramas with some suspense and some twists to them. That's not usually my favorite genre to read, but there is something about Sally Hepworth's writing that I do just really enjoy, so I like picking up her books, and I finally got around to Darling Girls. This one follows a couple of sisters who are all raised by an abusive foster mom. The sisters are brought back together when an investigation begins, when bones are found under the house that they grew up in. I did end up listening to this one on audiobook, and I enjoyed the audiobook experience. It was a pretty easy listen, and I generally just enjoyed the story kind of like I expected to with a Sally Hepworth story. It is more of a slow burn. It is more of a family story, a story about sisters and resilience, and it's a story with a lot of flashbacks and a lot of context building versus being this like twisty thriller in the present day. But again, all of that was kind of what I was expecting, and I had a pretty good time with it. This isn't my favorite Sally Hepworth, but I did like it, and if you typically like her stories as well, then I'd recommend picking it up. And then last is We Used to Live Here. I was reading this book in the month of September as a co-host for Gabby's book club, and by the time you're seeing this video, I don't think we'll have had the book club discussion yet, so I'll try to not fully give all of my feelings away about this book, but I will encapsulate a little review here before we get into the book club discussion. I gave this book 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. This was the standout book for me in the month of September, and I'm so glad I enjoyed it because I had been hearing really wonderful things about it, and I often have an experience where I hear a book get hyped up a lot and then I just find it to be okay, so I was really glad that I actually really enjoyed this. I tried to avoid hearing too much about the book before going into it so that I could try to have as much of an unbiased experience as I could, and I'm really glad I did that because I never knew where the story was going to go, and I just had a really good time with it. The setup of the story is that you're following this couple who has just moved into this house. It's like isolated sort of in the middle of nowhere. They've moved in to renovate the house, and then this family arrives and knocks on the door, and the husband says that he used to live in this house growing up and his family was in the area, and he has 3 children and a wife, and he wanted to take them around the house and show them where he grew up. So he's asking, like, do you mind if we come in? Totally understand if you don't want us to, but do you mind if I just show my family around? That is, I think, all you need to know before going into this book. It is such a mysterious book in not knowing what direction it's going to take. I didn't know what subgenre it was going to be and if it was going to lean into any certain aspects or go a certain direction or if there'd be a twist of a certain kind. So I was really just reading this as if I was watching a movie and just seeing the whole experience unfold and feeling like I was really in that experience with them. A lot of people are also noting this as a really scary book, and I have trouble feeling scared while reading books often, but I did find this to be a really scary book, so that's always fun to find something that can scare you. I'll keep it brief there so that I don't give too much away before the live show, but I'm really looking forward to discussing this one, and I just had such a good time with it. I think it's gonna be one of my favorite books of the year. So that's it for me. Those are all the books I read in the month of September. An underwhelming reading month, but those happen. I had a huge reading month in August, so natural to be a little burnt out and to just need to take things a little slower for a little bit. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you think, or let me know if I convinced you to pick any of them up. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!